Hello and welcome to the next YouTube video on my channel. If you are a chess player who wants to get better at the game, then this video is just right for you. In this video, I will show and explain to you how to calculate correctly in chess. So let's get started. It is very important in a chess game to be able to calculate the next moves of your opponent correctly, to guess your opponent's plans and tactics. Because of this, for example, modern chess computers are so strong. They calculate up to 100 moves just in one single second. However, a precise and far-reaching calculation is not possible in all cases. For example, in a calm position, where your own and your opponent's chess pieces are not in close contact to each other and there are no immediate threats, players usually have a choice of several equivalent moves, which, without any noticeable damage, can also be answered in many different ways. Trying to accurately calculate moves in advance is useless here. In such positions, you should stick with your general plan when you make the choice about which move you will do. But nevertheless, you still have to calculate your opponent's moves very often in chess. You can also imagine chess as a war between two states. In a war, not always the stronger one wins, but rather the smarter one does. The one who has predicted his opponent's plans and attacks. The big difference here is just that in a chess game, both armies are equally strong at the beginning of the game. In a war, that's most of the times not like that. That's also one of the reasons why chess is such an interesting game. So, you need to teach yourself to calculate sparingly from the start of the game. For example, when considering two possible sequences, you should trace one of them, and you should trace it to the end of the game. Do not go back to the first one. When you decide which sequence you choose, it has to be checked. That means it has to be calculated. This technique is very useful when playing with the tournament clock, which limits the time for thinking about your moves. This method will also save you from overwork, which often results into mistakes. And now I would like to show and explain you some rules and techniques that you should always note in your chess game. The first one is the rule of the square. In this position here that you can see on the chessboard, white does the next move. And I think it's pretty clear that this pawn on h3 wants to get as fast as enough on h8 to transform into a queen and win the game. But now my question is the black king here fast enough to stop the white pawn to get on h8? Of course, you could just count now how much moves the pawn needs to get up there and how much moves the king needs to get also there. But this is very tedious and time wasting. What is if your time's running out? For example, you're playing a chess tournament. There is a better and easier option how to solve this problem. You can do this geometric. It allows you to solve this problem at once, with only one single look at the chessboard. So we see pawn h3 is 5 moves away from the h8 field where he wants to get. We can also just subtract 3 from 8, that's equal to 5. And now we have to count down from the pawn to the left, so in the direction of the king, 5 squares, and mentally draw lines. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We draw the lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now we draw one line up. And now this here, so from this line and this line on this side, that's the pawn square. If the opponent's kings, so the black king here on c3, stands inside this square, the pawn here can always be stopped, no matter whose move is the next. If the king is outside this square, we need to find out if he can enter it with his next move. So this position here now on the chessboard, the king is obviously in the square. That means that the pawn here attempting to queen will be conquered. Figuring out what a pawn square would look like is easy enough. But this method can be further simplified, even simpler, by just drawing one line mentally, not two. This line is the diagonal of the square. So it goes from h3 up to c8. That's just the diagonal of the square which I've shown you before. So here, the pawn square, here up to here, and that's just one diagonal, one line that you have to draw mentally. You may encounter a position in the game which I will show you now. So if the pawn here isn't standing on h3, but right on h2, it obviously can skip this square when it's moving and move on h4. And this means that if the pawn is on h2 or h3, it isn't important. They both need just one move to get up on h4. So this pawn on h2 just skips this h3 square and gets to h4, and the pawn on h3 just goes one square up on h4. And that also means that both pawns, the one on h2 and the one on h3, both need 5 moves to get up to h8. Therefore, the pawn square of the pawn on h3 and of the pawn on h2 are both the same. Let's say, for example, that the black king isn't standing on c3, but rather on b2. And if it's white's move now, then the white pawn will make it to h8 before the black king can stop him, because the pawn square isn't here, but rather one square up here. And obviously, the black king isn't standing in the pawn square. The square rule remains unconditionally true if only 2 pieces, so a pawn and the enemy's king, are involved in the situation. If, on the other hand, the king can be helped by other chess pieces of his army, the rule of square may be invalid. And now I would like to show you another example for the rule of the square. So on this position on the chessboard, we can see that the white king cannot take out the pawn on d4, because if he would do it, then he would be outside the pawn square of the pawn b3. So the pawn square is here inside this. And if you would take out the pawn on d4, then the black pawn on b3 just needs 2 moves to get down to b1 and transform into a queen. And the white king couldn't stop him. For the same reason, the black king here on g6 cannot take out the white pawn on g5, because if you would do it, you would also be outside the pawn square. So the pawn square in here is here, this one here, and the white pawn on h6 could just move 2 squares up and transform into a queen, and the black king couldn't stop him. So if the black king and the white king both would play it right, so the white king would move back and forth from d2 to d3, and so the black king would move back and forth from g6 to h7, then this game would end up in a draw. So now you have learned about what the rule of the square is, and now you can test yourself with one exercise whether you can really use the rule of the square in a real chess game. The position that you can already see now on the chessboard is from Johann Berger in 1889. Here you can see that if the white rook takes out the black pawn on b6 and sets a check, and the black queen takes out the white rook, and then the white queen takes out the black rook with a check, the black king has to move on c5. Because with this move, he protects his black queen on b6, which is now threatened by the white queen, and he also attacks the white pawn here. And now, this game most probably will end up with a draw, and it doesn't matter whether the white queen will now exchange queens or not. And now, my exercise for you is to find out the right way for white to win this game. Start the video now and think about the right answer. Okay, so I hope you got the right answer now. Here in this position, you first have to take out the black rook with your own queen and set a check. Now, the black army has to take out your queen with their own queen on f6. And now, just now, you take out the black pawn on b6 with your own rook and set a check. And the black king now has to escape either on e5 or on e7 to protect his queen. Because if he would, for example, escape here, then the white rook could just take out the black queen and the game would be over easily for the white army. So, let's say the black king moves here. And now, you take out the black queen with your own rook, and the black king takes out your rook. And now, you just need 3 squares to go with the white pawn to get on b8 and to transform into a black queen. And white wins the game because the black king is not in the pawn square, because the pawn square is here. But it's now white's move. That was it and already with this video about how to calculate correctly in chess. I hope it helped you and I also hope you liked it. If you liked it, feel free to leave a like there and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember, this was just part 1 about how to calculate correctly in chess. In the near future I will make a video about part 2, so check it out. Till next time, bye!